I've also been very enthusiastic, and many of the things I've heard here in the conference by Amilcar Figueroa, pointing out the interesting development of Chavez, how he arrived at the commune, all these things bring home. And in fact, 2 years ago I published a book, I hope I'm not just doing publicity, Commune or Nothing, the very title, the very name of this part of the event, in which I survey certain communes and I develop a theory of the commune. In the past 2 years, however, I think like many of us, I've been acutely aware of imperialism. The genocide that Israel and the United States is carrying out in Gaza, I think has opened everybody's eyes to what most of us would call the primary contradiction. You know, the primary contradiction in the world today between imperialism and oppressed nations and oppressed peoples. And that brought to my attention the importance of studying the question precisely that we have here, the question, the relation of communes to imperialism or communes to anti-imperialism. And I should say that that is not a simple question. I've heard here people say, and I felt the same thing, that it's simply a commune is in itself an anti-imperialist project. And unfortunately that's not the case. But the very worst sort of commune you could see would be a kibbutz. The kibbutzes are parts of a settler colonialist project. They are completely, whatever socialist ideals they may entertain inside of a kibbutz, they're part of a settler colonialist, imperialist, Zionist project. So that's an example of an allegedly socialist commune which has a completely negative character. But you don't have to go so far. In Latin America, for example, we have the Zapatista movement. The Zapatista movement is an admirable movement, and all of us have been inspired by it. However, it's clearly the case right now that the connections between Zapatismo and what you could call the Mexican Project of National Liberation is by no means clear. I don't want to dismiss the Zapatista project, so only to point out that the need to confront imperialism by way of the communes that exist in the Zapatista Chiapas world is not necessarily always the best form of confronting imperialism. Or many people on the left, especially in Europe and the United States, are inspired by the Kurdish communes, or what's effectively Kurdish communes in Rojava. But it's also not exactly clear how those communes, how those communal projects align with an anti-imperialist project. Some even contend that they're functional to Zionism. So in some of my recent work, or most of my recent work, I've been trying to address this question of like, what is the relation, when and where is a commune actually anti-imperialist? And naturally, I turned to Marx, because Marx, as many people know, Marx actually was interested in communal production, communal exchange for his whole life, actually. I mean, for his whole adult life. In 1842, you can find Marx defending the communal collecting of land, communal rights to collect wood among Rhinish peasants. And then there's the famous moments along the way in the Grundrisse, in the Marxist manuscripts for Capital. There's a whole section called Forms That Precede Capitalist Production, which is really an investigation of like 4 different communal forms. And then the Paris Commune, 1871. And then finally, at the end of his life, Marx looks at the Russian Commune and engages in interesting exchanges of letters about the Russian Commune. Now, what I want to say about that is that many people have looked at this, particularly now there's a kind of fashion to look at the last moment of Marx and his relation to the Russian Commune. However, it's important to look at what Marx actually said. It is true, as many people will say, that Marx said the Russian Commune can be used French. I believe he was writing to Beres Hasulik, his correspondent, who was writing in French, said point d'appui, which I guess means a lever, a fulcrum for building socialism. So I would say, translating loosely, you can say, yes, Marx recognized that a commune can be a fulcrum for socialism. You can build socialism, as Chavez would say, with communes as the cell. However, Marx also said, and I think I'll quote literally, Marx also said that these communes would only be part of a socialist project if they were integrated with if they merged with the general course of Russian society. And he said it would take the Russian Revolution to save the Russian Commune. So from the beginning, from Marx's most thorough investigation of rural communes, Marx insisted that only if a commune was part of a project of national liberation, a part of general social emancipation, in which there was a political revolution, would the commune survive and actually be a useful cell of socialism. We should point out that Russia at that time was also a dependent country. It was a peripheral capitalist country, so there was an element of national liberation from especially French and English capital. Also, I've heard many people talk about the Paris Commune here, and it's true that Marx became very enthusiastic about the Paris Commune. He said the Paris Communists tried to take the heavens by assault, tried to reach the heavens by assault. Nevertheless, we should remember that Marx was also critical of the communards. Marx was aware that the communards should have acted more decisively, that they should have formed more of a national project, and also that they should have had more of a strategic vision. So I think these moments in Marx, both the last Marx and this kind of late Marx of the Commune, of the Paris Commune, Marx is aware that only if a commune is incorporated in a national project, a project of national liberation, will it really be a meaningful contribution to socialism, to the anti-imperialist struggle today. Now, I think if you look at Venezuela, you can see that our communes do function that way. First of all, in Venezuela, I think Amilcar gave a history of the Bolivarian Revolution. It declared itself anti-imperialist in 2002 or 2004, socialist in 2006, so it accumulated these definitions. But the whole communal project emerged after there was a political revolution in 1999 when Chavez takes power, and then the movement towards anti-imperialism and socialism. So the communal project accumulates these definitions, and it's already part of a project of national liberation. It's already part of a project of anti-imperialism when Chavez arrives to the commune. I think that you can, different things Chavez said point out his clarity about this. In the very moment when Chavez launched the commune, he said, it surprised me, he said, a isolated commune is counter-revolutionary. So pointing out the idea that a commune had to be part of this larger project. He also said, a commune is a cell, but a cell needs a body. And that body would be a certain institutional structure. And I think now in Venezuela, you can see how this idea exists, continues. I think one piece of evidence of the idea of the commune functioning as part of a cell and a body is the birth of the consultation process, the popular consultation processes. And I also think if you look at Nicolas Maduro's efforts over the past 13 years, you can see how he could say he spent the first 7 years of his presidency guaranteeing national liberation, and then maybe in the past 3 years turning to the commune. So you can see an awareness of the fact that the communes need to be part of this larger strategic anti-imperialist socialist project to actually go forward. I'd like to finish with one observation. You know, Lenin always insisted that slogans, Lenin hated slogans that became old or inappropriate, or Lenin always insisted on the importance of slogans being updated. This is a wonderful slogan. I fell in love with it. I put it as a title of one of my books. Nevertheless, in this moment of terrible imperialist attacks, I've often thought that the commune focused too much on the utopian moment of a revolution. And I was reminded today is the 21st of October, which is the one day after Chavez said the golpe de timón. The only time Chavez said commune or nothing was on October 20th, 2012. And it's one of those slogans that really took heart among people. But it's not Chavez's last words. Chavez's last words to the Venezuelan people were in December of 2012, in which he said, he didn't mention the commune, he didn't mention socialism, he said, ahora tenemos patria. And then he sang the song Patria Querida, which everyone will know. So I think we actually need to combine Chavez's two last testaments. Commune or nothing, but we also, patria should be there. I think it should be something like Comuna Patria o Nada. Because we really, without a patria, for English speakers, that would be an independent nation. Without independence, without sovereignty, the communal project will not go forward. So my humble contribution to slogan making would be that we should say something like Comuna Patria o Nada, commune independence or nothing, or commune sovereignty or nothing. Thank you.